Welcome to Advanced Insights, where we provide just what the show name suggests. Advanced insights into some of the most exciting trends and topics in technology. On this episode, I'm joined by Kimball Thurston, Chief Technology Officer at Wētā FX, one of the world's most advanced visual effects studios. Their teams are pushing the limits of rendering, simulation, and AI-assisted creative workflows. Kimball leads Wētā's future technology strategy for VFX production, overseeing the user-facing tools, research, and the render software that powers the studio's evolving pipeline. He brings 30 years of VFX experience and has played a leadership role across Wētā's proprietary rendering technologies, engineering, and architecture teams. Kimball, welcome to the show. I'm really excited to have you here today.
Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to talking about technology and movie making.
Well, I look at what you've done at Wētā FX over the past year, and I'm going to love to get into, how the technology you deploy has just made, amazing hit features that have come out. But before we jump in, I would love for our listeners to just hear a little bit from you about what drove you to digital effects and movie making. It's this confluence of technology and creativity that really has you at a unique cutting edge.
Right. Well, I mean, it's definitely one of those jobs that is like, I can't believe it's a job, where, I was studying robotics and computer vision, but then discovered that I could help people tell stories. And so friends called me up and said, hey, do you want to move across country? You pack up the truck and you drive across country, and all of a sudden, 30 years later, you find yourself still doing it.
That's like the proverbial story, like I packed my car, I went to Hollywood story.
That's right. It is absolutely that. It's absolutely that.
Well, you think about how what you do touches so many people. I mean, these movies just go global, and you are impacting the experience that so many people have in storytelling. What's your passion right now? I mean, what is it that's got you excited?
Well, I mean, I think we're on the precipice of sort of a sea change across the entire world, right? It's not just in the movie making space.
You mean with AI or
with AI? And I think there's multiple layers to that, right? Mm-hmm. There's some things where we can automate tasks that people might have had to do manually, but there's also equally a new creative palette that will unlock by being able to better capture and represent the world that is around us, right? And use that as a storytelling vehicle, right, where we can capture the 3D environment, the world, if you will.
Yeah, that's just right there is an amazing vision that we're going to be moving from 2D to surrounding 3D in terms of storytelling. Just on that aspect, I mean, I think about your comments, and what you're doing is unlocking creative artists. And I often hear, oh, well, AI, it's going to take jobs away, and it's going to impact the creative process. But as I hear you, it's an unlock.
I think so, and I think there are a lot of people who are very afraid of change. Very natural to feel these feelings, but when you look historically, there's been changes. The switch from film to digital was going to completely destroy the entire industry. Mm-hmm. Well, actually, job growth grew, right? And so I think that you'll see that with AI as people start to understand how to use that as a tool to tell different kinds of stories. How do we add a richness to the story, the backstories, or whatever little side adventure you might have that's your own personalized side adventure or something like this, right? These kinds of things are going to probably create jobs in the end. Some jobs will change, but other things will grow, actually.
What does it take? What kind of compute and scale do you need as you create these amazing digital effects? And maybe for our audience, it might be good to just preface, like, what are some of the movies that you've been behind, just whatever, in the past year?
Well, in the past year, we've worked on Superman, the Avatar 3, The Way of the Ash and Fire, some episodic work for Netflix for Stranger Things, a whole range of shows. We probably end up doing 20 or 25 shows in a year.
A massive reach of the technology output of your Wētā FX team. So yeah, so back to the question, like, what does it take to compute at the and create those type of digital effects? I mean, is there huge compute farms you need? Is it all in the cloud? Is it in your local shop?
Yes, I think it's probably all of those things. When we're creating these massive worlds, you need a large amount of compute, right? So and there's a huge amount of complexity to those worlds. They're very, very complex. Hundreds and hundreds of millions of different elements in a scene, in any one scene. Some of them are, instance, like a tree. There's copies of a tree or something like this. Even for shows like The Last of Us, right? You have thousands of zombies attacking a wall, right? You've got, either huge numbers of creatures, or you look at, Avatar. We're creating an entire planet worth of environment. These things don't fit on a graphics card. Offline renders, those go onto our big compute farm, right, where we have 500,000 threads running 24/7 to generate these very, very rich worlds.
Yeah, Kimball, that's great. You mentioned like libraries of like trees and elements, and so you think about a movie like Avatar. I mean, that must just be a huge asset to be able to have all of these libraries, and then through your flows, you bring it together. You create these scenes digitally. How does that work?
Well, so so absolutely, we have massive asset library. Some of them are generic assets, some of them are unique per movie, and in fact, we've built AI search engines to help people find these assets faster and get them pulled into a scene faster. Where you can, okay, hey, I need something that looks like this, and it shows you a few different options or whatever.
Kimball, how does that work in for an artist? Are they calling up those libraries? Are they creating real time by just editing? Like I'll say a much faster iteration in a digital environment, I assume.
Yeah.
So it seems like it's a faster creation process.
Well, that's the hope for sure, right? Movies still follow some fairly traditional things in terms of saying, hey, here's the set design and so artists are they're creating stuff based on a set design, and then you want things to be consistent over time, and so there's not only, okay, if I want this coffee mug on the table, they have to remember that a few minutes later we're also going to have we want to have that coffee mug still there and not have it disappear or something like this. How do we have tools that are helping merge tasks with data and the data pipeline and the library of things to pull in, and then sometimes people want to customize those on a per show basis.
How about AI agentic flows? Like right now, I feel like all of our worlds, we're all re-examining what we do, how we do it, because with these AI agentic flows, we can chain tasks together, we can insert reasoning, we can create subtasks, which are their own like sub-agents that are running. So I know in AMD, just in our chip design, we're reimagining this. Are you starting to deploy AI and agentic workflows, and what impact is that having to your world?
Yes, right. Like that's the easy answer, right? The longer answer is probably that we're trying to rethink how that production flow happens. From simple things like when we're bringing an asset in, like, is that ready for publish? Is the next person down the line going to receive data that's ready for what they need to do? So integrating all of these kinds of operations into everyone's daily lives.
So the agents is speeding up some of these creation activities. Do you see, as it evolves, will creators almost be like orchestrators, directors? Like, here's what I want the scene to be, and I want you to use, here's what I want you to create. And so then the agent could be pulling out some of these libraries, and again, the creativity is still in the artist, right. But is there yet another wave of speed up that may be coming?
Probably. We are constantly looking for ways of doing that. We create a lot of our own models. We have a research team that's creating models, and some of the things that we've done is do things like simulate the muscles behind a person's face, where we can't dissect them, so we have to estimate it. But then that is then able to be a brush. So when someone says, "Hey, we want them to smirk a little bit," they can do that, and it's simulating the muscles such that you get all the right behavior across the rest of the face that looks right, but they don't have to manually adjust 5 different curves. They're just sort of indicating a little motion, and that's I think is just a precursor of where we can get to, and where people can stop having to micromanage thousands of curves. I think that's a future that we won't be too far away from.
It's very significant to me what you said, because I think back to gaming. You used to always see the characters wearing a hat. Why? Because we didn't have the physics and the polygon compute capability to show how the hair would move as someone was running or the wind blows through it.
Right.
Well, now, of course, for a long time now in games, of course you see that hair flowing because we have the physics engines. It models that, and it looks so much more lifelike.
Yep.
Ray tracing of light bouncing around, same thing.
Yep.
And what you're describing is that on steroids with digital effects. I mean, you're literally modeling the muscle
Right.
of reactions under us, and that's simulated with physics so that you get the right responses.
So it's always about story first, right? And it's the small details that, if you get those small details right, it doesn't distract from the story, right? When someone sees something that's not quite right, they start looking for other things that are not quite right, right? And so when you're doing large scale storytelling that's going to go on a 150-foot screen, IMAX screen, or whatever it might be, those small details are all of a sudden very big. You have to have everything right from the large scale down to the tiniest of details.
You're running agentic flows, but you're in parallel. Each of those is rendering, so you're running across a heterogeneous mix. I mean, you're needing to run parallel, GPU-based computation. You have you're probably using CPUs for a number of these orchestration and probably even some of the rendering. I know a lot of the rendering is actually still staying in CPU.
In the CPU space, yeah, and that's mostly driven by RAM. The size of the scenes just doesn't fit on the graphics cards, right? Okay. So we still do a lot on the CPU. What you pointed out there is exactly one of the things that I think is more the future, right? Is like, how do you have that heterogeneous mix of different ways of producing content?
That's quite a demand on your computation, and you guys are experts at how to run that on the right engine at the right time. But you're also, as you said earlier, deploying AI. It's speeding up your process. You're creating these agentic workflows. How does tokenomics play in how you're progressing here? I mean, the movies of the complexity you just described, I would just think tokenomics has got to be a huge issue. The bill could be astronomical in creating these movies.
Absolutely right, and I think that's one of the things that the industry is struggling with a little bit, is trying to understand where and how to use these new tools that we have. Right, there's an element of discovery there, but it's also about optimization. Right, we in technology, we spend a lot of time optimizing our simulation engine, optimizing our rendering engine, working with the AMD team to profile and figure out how to run, right? Because we're using all the memory on the machine. There's no spare, right? And so how do we best run to take advantage of that and take advantage of the memory systems? But then at the same time, artists are having to then turn around and optimize their scene to then fit even within that budget, right? And so how do we spend a lot of time optimizing these stories, right? And so maybe there's a path that will evolve into where some of these things help optimize scenes instead of trying to produce them or something like that, right? And I think that's a more likely path, right, where we can use these tools to not necessarily have to create the entire world. We just create the portion of the world that the story is happening in, or if you will.
But one of the things you mentioned, partnership, and I'm so thankful the way Wētā FX and AMD have been able to partner, meaning you're sharing challenges you see, and we're bringing forth how we have technologies that can help, and you're influencing our roadmap, because as we understand your challenge, we're building up our capabilities going forward. You guys are already very expert at what you mentioned earlier, what needs to run in the cloud, what can run locally. You'll probably be one of the earliest adopters of what's called personal AI, what AI can run locally. Like, where you need the massive model or where you can really run, anywhere from I'd say a 70 to 200 billion on our Strix Halos. We can run up to about that size of model locally. And again, that'll keep going up generationally. It seems to me you guys embrace being the cutting, like really pushing the boundaries. Like your efficiency on all of your compute is incredibly high.
Yeah, well, we're already doing that, so yeah. Maybe is that a spoiler? I don't know. We already have people who are discovering the value of set an agent off to do a task overnight, much like you set a render off to run overnight. Some of our renders take 18 hours to produce. Let those run while I'm focusing on something here, right? And so most of our team is already used to that sort of real-time feedback for interactive and finding the right thing while they have an asynchronous something running in the background. When someone wants to make a modeling change and like adjust the hair that you spoke about earlier, right, and adjust how the hair is braided, right, they can't wait 400 milliseconds for that to go up to the cloud and come back, right? That has to be running on the GPU, right? If that involves a lookup for what style of braids are in vogue today.
Is that a challenge you give us at AMD and the rest of the folks in the industry that might be tuning in? Is that just lowering latency, improving the capability of what can be run locally versus on the cloud, giving you better tokenomics? Is that a bottleneck you see to continue to stay in the pace you've been of adopting cutting edge?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, speaking of current events, right, we have to solve the memory issue that's hitting the world right now. But I think that's where some of the platforms like the Strix Halo boxes that you guys have right now, those are very interesting devices to us, right? Because they have that unified memory, right? And so now we can have things that are on the CPU and are on the GPU, and they're addressing the same memory without having to copy it from one to the other or keep them in sync so much because they're just the same block of memory, right? And so these are really exciting to us.
You are definitely an early adopter. I will say most users don't take advantage of unified memory. I think most, like I'll say, general off-the-shelf software isn't thinking about how you can keep a data resident, operate on it from a CPU, a GPU, an NPU. But now when you get like what we're doing in Strix Halo, where we have a huge local memory pool that can be tapped by all three of those accelerator engines, and we're just early days here. Like these are these are the first models coming out, and we're really excited about the space. So I think digital effects might be one that shows the rest of the world how to really take advantage of this kind of compute platform.
Well, and that's sort of our hope as well, right? Is for years and years we've been the shining light for showing the world that you can do crazy compute to make pictures and sort of inspire a generation of game makers and movie makers, right? And so how we can continue to I think these kinds of technologies and how we adopt them will help other people figure out how they can adopt it.
Kimball, we at AMD are very committed to open source. We look at our AI stack, it's open source. We welcome a community co-development. We welcome the tailoring in that innovative process, and all the tools that we use are predominantly open source. How does that play in the world of digital effects? Are you a supporter of open approaches?
Very much so, and from probably multiple levels, right? First, we're an industry that it's a huge community. We all know each other. We're all friends. We have the Academy Software Foundation that's part of the Academy of Motion Pictures, but we've had a growing number of projects that we host there, including one that we've recently open sourced called the Rongotai Model Train Club. That's a little play on words for about model training, not little model trains that are running around in circles, but maybe there's a marketing pitch in there. I don't know. You mentioned fear, and one of the fears that the industry has is this is an industry that makes money by people going to the movies, right? And if all of a sudden everyone can just pirate everything, or if they can't claim copyright, how do you get people to go to the cinema? Yes. We've made an open source project that it helps artists, work in refinement, do some refinement training on models and these sorts of things. But fundamentally, it's more about tracking the provenance of that, right? So saying, hey, we use this model to do this task that was part of setting up the simulation, right? And recording that for our studios, right? Such that we're keeping track of what we're using, such that we can be open and transparent about the models that we're using, and provide that assurance to people that we're not using things which are IP unfriendly or anything.
That I didn't even think about that aspect. That open really helps you and helps your artists feel comfortable. It's transparent. They can see how the IP is being protected.
That's right.
And not incorporated into
a pixel or yeah. So yeah, open on multiple levels. Yeah.
Well, Kimball, let's think going forward. I always like concluding on the future view. I would love to hear your thoughts. You just briefly mentioned 3D models earlier. Is that coming? I mean, do you see do you see AI and the new modeling capabilities? If and when will it truly start to enable 3D digital effects, 3D movies? I mean, just being in an immersive experience.
Yeah, I mean, and when I say 3D, like what I'm more hinting at, right, is there's a lot of talk about world models. Okay, how do we have a model that can represent the entire world? I think this is overzealous, I guess I'd say, right? Where when you look at the world, right, we're a diverse collection of a whole bunch of people, right? And so it's going to be more like a world of models, not a world model.
World of models meaning just like you have different libraries today, you'll have different world models.
Right, and so we'll go out and we'll capture an environment, and have that as a represented encoded model, if you will. You might have a character that's a model. There might be other sort of little models that we experiment with creating.
So I've had the opportunity to visit the Sphere in Vegas. Right. Is that an indicator of what's to come? Because that was a very different experience, but I was thinking about the computation that must be required to create that kind of experience. Do you think that can become more widespread with some of the techniques that you guys are pioneering?
Yeah, absolutely. Like Ben Grossman's work on, and I don't know if you saw the Wizard of Oz experience yet. So yeah, that's Ben Grossman and his team. They've done a fantastic job at trying to integrate that in and bring AI into a world of restoration plus extending a world and creating a larger world. And so that's really neat to me. And as a software engineer, I kind of love what Ben has done, because he's actually turned that experience into a version piece of software, right? So you basically, if you go from week to week, he's fixing things as they go, right? And so you get a bug fix every.
Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah, so that's a dynamic digital experience. Yeah. Is that the way of the future as well? I mean,
well, I think so, and that's sort of what I was alluding to before. I think there'll be a new palette of ways of telling stories, right? Where you can have the main experience at the cinema, but you can have different ways of bringing people to the cinema, where they each have their own little mini storyline.
I really appreciate, for myself and listeners, sort of getting a glimpse of the future of where storytelling is going and where
one possible future.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you very much for your insights in digital effects and what you guys are doing at Wētā FX. All of us, the consumers of the entertainment industry, are so appreciative of the work that you and the team do.
Yeah, well, thank you, and thank you to AMD for continuing to make great hardware. We certainly take advantage of it. We love it.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I truly enjoyed chatting with Kimball. A few takeaways really stood out. How real-time processing creates a digital world at the scale of a Pandora for Avatar, including the creation of their own models. I love the example of Wētā FX creators simulating the muscles in the face to realize the intended facial expression. Their compute demands are massive. They've optimized using the right engine, the CPU or the GPU, the cloud versus local, and the tokenomics optimization to create the vivid imagery in the movies that they've supported. Great to see digital effects and Wētā FX as an early adopter and evangelist for the benefits of local AI with unified memory, and also being big supporters of open source. And lastly, the future of VFX will likely include a world of 3D models, which will render even more lifelike imagery. Thank you for joining us today. I look forward to bringing you more in-depth conversations on cutting-edge technology, industry insights, and visionary perspectives from some of the brightest minds in the field. You can watch the video show on AMD's YouTube channel, or you can listen on audio-only platforms, including Spotify, Amazon Music, and YouTube Music. Technology is always advancing, and I can't wait to share more insights with you next time.